All right, Pete, to start with, let's talk about Celtic going into the January transfer window. What positions is Brendan Rodgers targeting going into the window?
Yeah, I think I'm expecting Celtic to be relatively busy in this January transfer window. There is a few positions in the team that Brendan Rodgers would like to strengthen in. He feels the squad is a bit thin, and I think the priority for them going into this January window will be a new striker. Obviously, they do see Kyogo and O go away on international duty to the Asian Cup in January, so that leaves them a bit short up front. So yeah, I think striker is the number one priority, but there is other areas of the team that he's looking to strengthen in as well. A goal scoring midfielder is something that Brendan Rodgers would like to bring in if possible. Also, a left sided winger, potentially a goalkeeper. Not a top priority, but it is an area of the team that does need strengthening long term, really, with still Joe Hart coming to the end of his contract this summer as well, and still no decision made on him. But yeah, I think striker will be the number one priority for Celtic, and if they get any more than that, I think it'll be a bonus for Brendan Rodgers and the rest of the Celtic recruitment team.
And if we focus for a minute, Pete, before talking about specific names, what sort of budget are we roughly looking at going into the window?
Yeah, obviously Celtic finances aren't in bad order, but obviously crashing out of Europe has hit their budget. If they had remained in the Champions League into the new year or even the Europa League, that would have given a bigger transfer kitty for Brendan Rodgers to go and spend. But we all know the January transfer window is very difficult to navigate. There won't be massive amounts of money for Brendan Rodgers to use, so he's going to have to be sort of savvy in the market. He might have to sell to buy as well, just to increase his transfer kitty going into the new year. But yeah, I think Celtic probably looking around maybe the 6 to 10 million mark, I think, for a transfer budget to be used. But again, obviously in January, we know not a lot of money is spent, and loans do seem to be the normal in January. So I'm sure Brendan Rodgers and the recruitment team up at Celtic Park will be exploring that loan market as well to see what are the best alternatives out there for them.
Pete, you mentioned in there earlier that actually they're looking at an attacking midfielder potentially from a goal-scoring perspective. Now, according to Gwangju FC, the South Korean club, their midfielder Jung Ho Yeon is in advanced talk with Celtic over a potential January move. Is there actually validity in that story?
I think there is a bit of interest there. Whether he's Celtic's number one target, I'm not too sure. He's relatively unproven, the young South Korean player. So I think Brendan Rodgers ideally would like somebody who could come straight into the team, add goals to his side as well. Obviously, Matt O'Reilly's had a very good season so far for Celtic. He's been the one scoring the goals from midfield as well. But they've really missed Rio Hatate. He's been sidelined for quite a long period now, so he's been a big miss for Celtic, and they've missed his goals and his guile in midfield as well. So I think that's why Brendan Rodgers is looking at this midfielder. Also, the Portuguese player Thiago Aro has been mentioned as a potential target for Celtic. That's a deal that they're also exploring as well. I think he would probably be further down the line than the South Korean midfielder from Gujun FC. I think obviously Celtic have had a great deal of success signing Asian players from the J League and also the K League as well. So it's a market they're well aware of, and that's maybe why they're looking at Jung Ho Yeon as well.
And it sounds like Aberdeen have made clear that their star man, talking of strikers, Bojan Miovski, is going to be valued at around probably the maximum mark that we discussed for Celtic's transfer kitty. Do you think that's going to put Celtic off, or actually is there clear interest in the forward?
Yeah, I don't think it'll put Celtic off. There's definitely clear interest from Celtic. They have been watching him for quite a while now. He's a player that's high up on Brendan Rodgers' list of potential attacking reinforcements. They will be waiting to see what happens with Aberdeen. Obviously, Aberdeen do not really want to lose Miovski because he's a key man for them, and they've struggled so far this season. They don't want to be dragged into this relegation fight, so they'll want to keep hold of Miovski. But a lot of it might come down to the player. If he's aware of Celtic's interest in him and Celtic do follow it up with a firm offer for him, it's a situation where Miovski might push for that move, hoping to get a move to Celtic to be competing for titles and trophies, and maybe playing in Europe next season as well, playing at the highest level, because he showed this season in Europe as well for Aberdeen that he can perform at that level, scoring several goals for them as well. So I think Aberdeen, until that transfer window closes in January, they can't be sure that Miovski will stay at Pittodrie. And I'm sure Celtic, as we've seen in the past, Celtic and Rangers, if there's a player performing well for the other clubs in Scotland, if one of the big boys come for you, it's pretty hard to keep hold of them.
It does happen very often, doesn't it? I mean, one last piece of news before we move on to outgoings that I thought was quite interesting, Pete, to discuss is that Al Ittihad, it sounds like, are pushing Jota, the former Celtic star, out of the door. Could he potentially return to Celtic Park? Could there be a reunion there with Brendan Rodgers?
Never said never. Obviously, he was a massive success at Celtic, Jota, when he first arrived, and really was an outstanding player for Celtic and one of the best players in Scotland, and that won him that big money move to Al Ittihad. Obviously, the deal hasn't worked out for the Portuguese as he probably expected. I'm sure if the opportunity was there for Celtic to bring him back, it's something that Brendan Rodgers would definitely look at. I think they have missed his spark this season in the final third. He could win a game on his own, Jota, as he proved during his time at Celtic as well, and it'd be a huge lift to the Celtic fans, I think, and also the team if they were able to bring him back. But again, a lot of it's going to come down to wages. His wages are astronomical now following that move to Saudi Arabia. So Celtic could get nowhere near those right now as well. And also there will be a lot of interest in Jota, probably from English Premier League clubs if he is made available in the January window by Al Ittihad. So again, that might price Celtic out of a move for their former hero.
And looking at their outgoings, Pete, are there any people that are there any players that Brendan Rodgers is looking at maybe leaving specifically?
Yeah, there's obviously Brendan Rodgers has admitted that maybe the squad is imbalanced and there's a lot of players on the fringes and not going to be in his plans. I think Marco Tilo, who arrived in the summer, the striker, he might have to go out on loan because he's hardly had a look in since his arrival. So he could be one name that could move on. It looks like Ideguchi, the Japanese midfielder, could be making a permanent move away from Glasgow. He's been out on loan this season and has performed quite well. So if Celtic can get their money back on him, I think that would represent good business as well. Benjamin Siegrist, the goalkeeper, could potentially also leave if a suitable offer came in. He's not really fought for that number one shirt with Joe Hart. He's been the undisputed number one for Celtic this season, and Scott Bain is also ahead of Siegrist probably in the goalkeeping plans as well. So he could be one that could possibly move on. Also, Kobayashi, the midfielder as well, could be allowed to move on if an offer was to come in for him. And there's always been question marks around Alexandro Bernabia, the left back, the Argentine, who's really struggled to hold down and make an impact in that Celtic starting 11 as well. So I think Celtic would maybe listen to offers for players like that. And also another one I think Celtic would love to maybe move on would be James McCarthy, obviously the former Republic of Ireland international, nowhere near it at Celtic right now. He's not in the plans, but he's still a big wage earner there and is on a lucrative contract. So I think if Celtic could maybe move him on, that would increase their transfer kitty as well and also help balance the books at Celtic Park.
And as reported by Football Insider, Pete, it sounds like Celtic don't want to sell Matt O'Reilly at all in the January transfer window, despite interest in Premier League clubs. Do you have any further information on this for us?
Yeah, obviously, no doubts there's going to be interest in Matt O'Reilly. For me, he's probably been Celtic's best player this season, so that's why he is garnering interest heading up to the January transfer window. But there's no way that Celtic will countenance a sale of Matt O'Reilly in the January transfer window. It would command a huge fee for them to even reluctantly consider to letting him move on. And also the player is happy at Celtic. He wants to stay there. He's enjoying his football under Brendan Rodgers, scoring goals in midfield. And I think it's probably not the right time for him to be even thinking of moving midway through the season. I think if he continues his form, which he's shown for Celtic so far this season, I think there'll definitely be major interest in Matt O'Reilly come the summer. But he wants to stay at Celtic Park right now. He wants to help Celtic retain that Scottish Premiership title, and that's his main focus right now, is to stay and do his best for Celtic. So I don't think there will be a move for Matt O'Reilly in January, and that can only be positive news for Brendan Rodgers.
And what sort of valuation did the club have on the midfielder?
Well, obviously, Celtic pulled off a bit of a steal when they signed him initially on a free transfer as well. So I think it would be a massive profit for Celtic if they do consider selling them. In the going market right now, you're probably looking between 25 to 30 million for a player like Matt O'Reilly, who's played at the highest level in the Champions League for Celtic this season as well, and he's a goal-scoring midfielder, and there's not too many of those about right now, and still at such a young age as well. I think he's only going to get better and better and go from strength to strength. So I think Celtic could demand a huge fee for him if they do want to sell him. But as I said, that's not in their thinking right now for January. But I think come the summer, there will be a lot of clubs, not just in the English Premier League, but also across Europe, who will be ready to test Celtic's resolve to hang on to Matt O'Reilly.
And Pete, to wrap up Celtic, can you give us any information, please, on Nat Phillips? There's been talk for quite a while that his loan's going to be terminated, but it hasn't happened yet. Do you see that happening potentially going into January?
Yeah, I think it's looking pretty inevitable that Celtic will end that loan deal for Nat Phillips. Obviously, he was a late signing in the summer transfer window when Celtic had a few concerns at centre-back as well, letting Carl Starfelt leave, and also a few injury problems as well to Cameron Carter-Vickers plus others. So it's been a move that just hasn't worked out for either party. Nat Phillips, he's not played as much first-team football as he would have liked, and when he has played, he has come under a bit of fire from some Celtic fans with that last outing in that shock defeat to Kilmarnock a few weeks back as well. So yeah, I think Celtic would be happy to let him return to Liverpool. That would make room in the squad for a potential new signing, and also save on the wage bill as well. And I'm sure Liverpool ideally would like to see Nat Phillips maybe go out on loan somewhere else in January and get regular first team football, because he's unlikely to get that at Liverpool right now, and probably best that he goes out on loan to another club to get regular action and maybe put himself in the shop window for another club.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.